welcome back to Nails Before Films. As the title suggests, I'm reviewing Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Similar to The Fall Guy, I only watched this because it was the biggest movie coming out. I wasn't hyped at all. I really liked the reboot trilogy, but wasn't too impressed by the idea of a sequel without Caesar, the main reason why people like the reboot films. After actually watching the movie, I was even less impressed. The film is not unwatchable, but it's certainly a huge step down from the previous movies. I didn't enjoy it, but it's definitely not offensively bad. I'll explain why in this video and try to avoid spoilers along the way. Honestly, I can't really think of anything this film does well, but I can list a bunch of shortcomings. First and foremost, it is boring overall. There's so much fluff. The main bad guy, Proximus Caesar, doesn't show up until halfway through the movie. It takes half of the film just to get to the main villain. This movie is so boring at times. There is a lot of stuff that looks cool but takes up too much time and ultimately doesn't affect the plot. While the idea of this film could work, it'd be interesting to see how the apes changed after Caesar passed and a new generation that only knows humans as stupid animals. But the film takes way too long to get there. The pacing is terrible. The movie can be so slow, especially in the beginning. They spend way too much time on cool animations and pretty sceneries. There are also irrelevant scenes that do nothing for the story. For example, Noah and his companions run into zebras during their journey. They just stop and say they're like horses with stripes. And I was like, why the fudge do we need this? Is this some reference that I don't get? Why do we need freaking zebras in this movie? Another example would be Noah finding a telescope. It just happens out of nowhere and I don't understand why we need that either. Maybe these are references or Easter eggs, but for someone who's only watched the original film and the reboot trilogy, they're just meaningless fluff. This movie does not need to be 2 hours and 40 minutes. It can easily be trimmed down to 2 hours. Next, the characters from this film are so much weaker than the reboot trilogy. The biggest reason why people like the reboot so much is because of Caesar. He's just so charismatic, and we get to see him go from an innocent ape who relates more to humans to a smart, compassionate, strong leader who would do anything for his kind. I love Caesar so much. He's just so charming. I would totally follow someone like Caesar. Anyway, while Noah is an okay protagonist, I can't help but compare him to Caesar, and he's just not as interesting. His growth throughout the film is not as impressive, and his goal to save his clan from another ape is so small compared to Caesar freeing his kind. The stakes are just so low in Kingdom, and I was never invested when watching the movie. Similar to Caesar, Noah starts out as a somewhat childish ape who doesn't know anything beyond his clan, and while he learns and grows throughout the film, he doesn't transform into a man and a leader like Caesar. He's just not as strongly motivated and lacks the charisma. In the end, he still feels a bit immature, and I can't see him as the protagonist for another 2 films. He's decent enough for this one, but I don't think he's enough if future films were to have higher stakes. Besides the protagonist, the supporting characters are weak too. There are so many things that they don't explain. For example, Noah's relationship with his dad is a bit rocky. Why? No idea. Raka, an orangutan, knows a lot about Caesar and dedicates his life to preserving Caesar's teaching. Why? Again, no idea. Characters like Raka are just significantly less interesting and endearing than characters like Morris. It's hard to get attached to them when we only have a surface level understanding of who they are. There are a couple of good guy deaths in this movie. I won't spoil who, but I felt nothing when they died because we never get the chance to become emotionally attached to these characters. In Rise, I felt something when the gorilla died because I knew why he was so loyal to Caesar, and it was so sad and touching to see him sacrifice himself to save Caesar. Nothing like that happens in Kingdom. When the deaths happen, my reaction was, what? They're dead? Just like that? It's not emotional at all, and I just can't bring myself to care because I hardly know these characters. The only character that they did marginally better is the human girl May. All of the previous human companions in the reboot films are good guys who help the apes. However, May's somewhat in between. She's neither good nor evil, just extremely loyal to her kind, which is understandable. She's perfectly fine with lying, manipulating, and killing people and apes for her mission, which shows how selfish humans can be. But we can't really blame her because she's just trying to save her own kind. Even though there are significantly less human characters in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes compared to the previous films, they still manage to keep the human-ape conflict, and it's quite effective through May's actions. Now, let's talk about the villain of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Proximus Caesar. He is the main reason why this movie is so bland, and what makes it even more frustrating is that Proximus has the potential to be a good villain. He enslaves his own kind and humans, he's obsessed with advanced human technology and surpassing humans, and he twists Caesar's words to control the apes. These are all very interesting. However, he shows up way too late and we have no idea why he does any of this. How does he know about Caesar? How does he know about human technology? How did he become Proximus Caesar? How does he know humans are once more advanced than apes? We don't know any of these. Proximus turns out to be a generic villain who wants to be king because of reasons, I guess. One of the reasons why I like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is because of the villain Koba. We know why Koba hates humans so much, and because we understand his motive and why he disagrees with Caesar, we are intrigued by him and their conflict. Koba also uses the apes' respect and loyalty towards Caesar to manipulate them into fighting humans. But the way he does it is way more clever and interesting than Proximus. We have no idea why Proximus is the way he is, and his connection with Noah is weak too. Noah hates him for attacking his clan, but Proximus doesn't care about Noah at all. So when Noah finally defeats Proximus, it's not as satisfying because they barely know each other. Besides, we don't really see Proximus do anything overly evil. Sure, he enslaves the apes, but he doesn't kill anyone himself, and we don't see what he does with the captured humans either. The movie does get a bit more interesting once Proximus shows up, but because we know so little about him, he becomes a boring generic bad guy. This last complaint is a bit personal, and it's not a big deal, but I find the eagle thing to be so dumb. Noah's clan is called the Eagle Clan because they raise eagles, and the way they command the eagles is by singing to them. I don't know why, but I just find that to be so dumb and random. They do utilize this gimmick in the movie, and maybe some people think it's cool, but it's stupid to me. Look, I think apes riding horses is cool as heck, but apes summoning eagles by singing, that's a bit too much. Anyway, that's about it for my thoughts on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. It's not terribly offensively bad, but there's really nothing good about it either. It's just a very bland movie with boring characters, especially compared to the previous trilogy. There's really nothing that we haven't seen before. Noah's growth is inferior to Caesar's in Rise. We already have an ape villain who's more like men in Dawn, and apes being enslaved happened in War. I wouldn't tell people to stay away from Kingdom, but I'll warn them to have very low expectations. I'm not looking forward to any sequels, but I do recognize there are still stories they could develop within the reboot universe. However, I really hope they have a stronger story and more interesting characters next time. Hope you guys like my review and nails. I was pretty uninspired after watching this film, so I just did the characters and the symbol. But it was pretty fun to try different methods to create the rust effect. As always, like, subscribe, comment, share, do what you want. Keep nailing it and be stronger tomorrow, people.